the introduction, just for the purpose of the recording,
Yeah.
I emailed you, is I'm doing a conversation series with women who are related to art or technology, or I've actually just started also talking to really incredible women that I admire because
Hmm.
I'm finding that a lot of themes that I'm thinking about in my life and my practice resonate in really interesting ways across industries as well.
Hmm.
Um, Niki works for ICM, and um, we first got connected through some of my artwork that is hanging in her office that
Yes.
go see in person. And we finally met, and what really struck me about you was not just how you helped me understand in entertainment the way that your role of supporting artists, of working with artists, of connecting artists to opportunities, but you seem to have some really unique ways of not just supporting artists, but um, finding them as well.
Hmm.
I don't want to give anything away because I can ask some more specific questions. But I'd love to just have you start and share
Sure.
what it is that you do in your own words and how it is that you ended up there. And I don't understand enough about your industry, but I know that you have a really nice office. So
Yeah. Yes. I do have a very nice office. So I think the easiest way to describe what I do is, I represent writers and directors, and I help them find job opportunities that they are excited about in the studio system and outside the studio system. And then I also help them bring to life the stories that they wish to tell that are not yet set up or not a priority for um, the studio, again, the studio system or the buyers. um and I kind of, it's interesting, my profession is still one of the few that has a like a kind of climb the ladder on your way up. By the way, I just noticed someone's AC turned on, if you want me to kind of move if that's too loud. Oh, okay, great. So it's one of the few, I feel like, careers that starts almost like an apprenticeship, and that you continue to grow from there without necessarily required extra schooling or anything like that. So I started off in the mailroom at an agency, at a different agency in New York. I worked my way on to a literary desk where I worked for a woman who also represented writers and directors, but she kind of focused more on authors, and she helped transition their books into film and television. And after working for her for a couple of years, I was asked to move out to LA to focus on film writers and directors. Did that at this other agency, and about 5 years ago came to ICM to be an agent in the film department.
and your connection to literature is something that I'm really interested in your work, and I had forgotten that you had started even more focused in that area.
Yeah.
How have you found that transition of the worlds between you've always been in this agency world, but how have you found from New York to Los Angeles, and also from this New York, at least being this very publishing centric?
Hmm.
I was just asking about the transition from like a literature base into a movie
Hmm.
base, as well as like that New York to Los Angeles transition you made at the same time.
It's interesting because I think right now the biggest difference is being put to the test. I think in the publishing world and the literary world, people are totally happy being left, kind of alone and doing their reading at home. And you have, this may seem like, you know, kind of obvious, but some of the people that work in that world are a little bit more kept to themselves. They don't mind being bookworms and really enjoy cuddling up with a book and reading. And so being social and going out is not necessarily, doesn't have as much value, and it doesn't have the importance in the lives of those people that wish to succeed in that world. Obviously, they have social events and stuff like that, but I will say the biggest difference in moving from New York to LA is the social aspect of Hollywood, and how um, important it is to be out and about and making connections, but real relationships with people so that you can understand what it is that makes them tick and what it is that gets them excited about a new piece of material. And I think a lot of people embrace the fact that out here, it's not just a 9 to 5 and then you go home and go about your life. It's much more of a lifestyle. If you care a lot about the film business, you end up going to premieres and parties and trying to network is probably the term I should use, but I don't think a lot of people would feel that it's just that. They just really truly have a yearning to create more relationships around themselves so that their jobs aren't so difficult and tedious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because we want to spend time with people that we like, who care about the same things as we do. So yeah, I understand.
Totally.
That networking thing also for me, it always seems like I don't want to call it community building because that seems like it has to be fake, but they are.
I know it's true, but it's something that honestly I think LA thrives on, and I think it breeds the kind of people, or at least the ones that you find to be really successful are the ones that embrace it and are out and about, and want to meet more people, excuse me, that have the same values and just creative ambition and goals that you have. So
And can you tell us a little bit more about the way that you like to find the artists that because I know you represent on both sides.
mm-hmm.
How do you find particularly the artists that you want to represent and work with, and what are you looking for from a creative perspective, but also that community interpersonal perspective?
So most of my clients these days come from my relationships with people. So, for example, when I was a young agent, I would go to the short, but my point being that I was going to every short film festival and I was just scouring the town. I was reading, I don't know how familiar you are with this or if you've ever heard of it before, but the Blacklist website started up a couple of years ago off of this kind of viral sensation of these scripts that every year were voted on by executives as the best unproduced scripts in Hollywood. And so then the guy who created that started a website where any writer could upload their own script and people could go read it. So when I was, a coordinator, which is the half step between an assistant and an agent, I would read, 20 scripts a weekend from that website just to see if anything sparked my interest. Or I would read the competitions from UCLA and USC and NYU from the students coming out of that school. So I would do a lot of that kind of recruiting. And that's how I started to find my first client I found through that. And a couple of my first few clients I found through that. And then after, a year or two of helping these people grow and learning a little bit more about the business and B, learning a little bit more about what I like, I started to form really great relationships with the managers I was working with. And those people become my teammates. The managers I work with on my clients, they're really, really important parts of my life. And they're people that I spend hours with. All of the strategy around every artist is me and a manager kind of on the phone, figuring out next steps together. So most of my clients now, 5 years later, come from these managers who I already have a relationship with, who I already share a client with. They know kind of what my sensibility is. They know what my management style is with my clients and how their clients react to that sort of management style. And they hopefully, most managers will work with writers or directors before an agent comes on board, certainly with writers. So it's been fascinating because they know my personality. These managers will know my personality and know the kinds of, voices I respond to. And then they will then bring them up to me. Hey, I represent so-and-so writer. He or she has been developing his or her own voice for X amount of years. I think we're at that point where we're ready to bring in an agent and we can actually transact on this person, because that's the main difference between what I do and what a manager does, right? I'm supposed to be finding them business opportunities and ways to make money. So it's like, okay, we think that we've really honed in, this artist has really figured out what he or she wants to do, and now we know how to make this into a business. Will you help guide us in that world? So that's how I get most of my clients these days, is from recommendations from people that I've worked with before, who kind of know what I respond to and what I like. These are both going to feel like silly examples because they're not necessarily movies that would win Oscars by any stretch. But I'll never forget how I felt after watching Clueless the first time, or Mean Girls for the first time, because I truly felt like women were being represented correctly on the screen. And again, I was a young woman at the time too, and it just was so weird to me that I felt like the representation of women on camera was so black and white. It was like, okay, if you wanted to be like, super organized and smart, then you had to be also a bitch. Or if you were not as organized and smart, well, then you were the dumb one and the silly one. And there was no version of like, a woman who could be smart but also be silly at times, or a woman who was maybe trying really hard to figure it out but had good intentions, and it was either one. It was just so weird to me, and everything felt so caricature-y, if that makes sense. And so once I got to college and I started studying film and television, I just started to lean in to these voices that were really changing the way we viewed women. And also, eventually, what I started to notice too is that, I wasn't feeling like there were a ton of artists making, film or television for, the non-white, let's say, um, uh, audience. And not to say that there wasn't anything at all available, but I just felt like, being the daughter of two immigrants from a Middle Eastern country, like, once I saw what Mindy Kaling was doing, for example, or Aziz Ansari was doing, I felt so understood and heard in a way that I had never felt my whole life watching film and television. And that's when I really started to hone in on it. I would say the female forward focus was always there from when I was in college, of like, I don't understand why we don't have this more. I don't understand why things, why are like, you know, rom-coms for teenagers and 20-year-old women being written by like 40 or 50-year-old white men. I just didn't make any sense to me. And eventually, when I got to be a part of the business and watching it all, I kind of watched this unfold before my eyes, of like this transition between, you know, these older guys that had been doing it for years into embracing women now, where you've got, Tracy Oliver, Olivia Milch, and Kay Cannon, all these women, Leslie Headland, all these women who are being embraced for their super unique, really cool voices. Tina Fey, obviously, has been doing it forever. Amy Poehler, same. But like, you know, it's really transitioning now to a point where it's not just like 5 women who can do it. It's all different types of women who can do it. And so anyway, those are the things that I really wanted to focus on when I was emerging into the business, and I'm really glad I did, because those are the types of artists that I feel fulfilled, A, supporting, and B, they're creating the kind of content that I really want. I'm doing everything I can to support more women and people from interesting backgrounds telling stories. I think it's not just one, unfortunately, because we have this industry that's so, it takes so many people to get a writer a job or a director a job, that it's more so like an education. And I think the biggest thing I've tried to do is just really stand by my word. And I think that my colleagues are noticing it too. It's something I've been saying for 5 or 6 years, that this is my goal, that if you're looking for, a female writer or someone from an interesting background that you don't think you're gonna be able to find, come to me, just call me and I'll give you what I have. And I found over the years that people have said, you know, I'm reaching back to your list because when I tell you I want a female writer, you always give me exactly that, and you're never trying to push something like some other agenda. Um, so that's that's what I can do. I also, you know, take real consideration when taking on new clients and how this person is different from people that I already represent, because it wouldn't be helpful if I represented like 20 of the same thing. There's no way that each of them could get an equal opportunity for all of those jobs that could be right for them. You know, I could probably do a great job, but like, you know, it might be good too if they were represented by other people who could compete with my clients if they are very, very similar. Um, but at the end of the day, like, I think it ultimately is about, do I respond to the voice? Do I respond to, you know, what this person's career goals are? And if I'm on the same page as that person of like what he or she wants to do and how we want to get there, then I'm all about it. Well, I represent a fabulous playwright named Teresa Rebeck, who is Pulitzer nominated. She also has been very, very outspoken about, you know, women in the workplace and women, especially in Hollywood, because she came up, you know, as a writer in the '90s and was writing on like NYPD Blue, and she had an interesting situation creating a TV show and learned a lot about that in early 2000s. And she most recently just wrote a feature for Jessica Chastain called The 355. That's an all-female spy film. So I've been really excited because A, that movie is going to be coming out top of next year, but B, because she just came to me with a new idea a couple of weeks ago that is kind of a revamp of an old Western, but done with an all-female cast. So while I've been in quarantine, I've been helping her bring the project to a couple of actresses and bring it to a couple of production companies to see if we can get them to partner up and hopefully sell this thing. So even though it's been kind of weird, you know, we're still active and we're still trying to push projects forward. So that's been a highlight of it for sure, because it's been moving along very well.